Joining us now is Command Sergeant Major Michael T. Hall. He was recalled from retirement last year to serve here in Afghanistan. He is now the senior non-commissioned officer in the United States military here in Afghanistan. Command Sergeant Major Michael Hall, thank you very much for your time tonight. It's a real honor to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Let me ask you about the friendly fire incident that Richard was just talking about. I don't know. I'm not a military expert. I'm not a tactical expert by any means, but it seems to me that there are a bunch of different simple things to try to prevent friendly fire incidents. Everything from, reflective patches and tape to GPS beacons, that sort of thing. How is it that these Afghan troops weren't identified as friendlies?
Well, we sent an assessment team out there to try to figure out what happened. I mean, the systems are in place. For whatever reasons, the systems didn't work, obviously, because we killed some friendly troops. We'll relook at the system and try to figure out what happened. I don't think it's a communications problem. I think in most cases like this, you'll find that the standard operating procedures probably just weren't followed. And that's my opinion. When these things like this happen, it's almost always that we didn't follow our own procedures in a lot of cases, or someone along the line didn't follow their own procedures. But there's a lot of investigation to figure out what happened, because obviously it's very serious. Any loss of life or any injury is very, very serious. So
one of the things that has been talked about a lot in the United States is the very deliberate efforts by U.S. forces and coalition forces to reduce Afghan civilian casualties and to try to make amends when casualties do happen. What's the equivalent of that when it is military casualties on the Afghan side? Do you take some extra effort not only to investigate it but to reestablish confidence?
Yeah, absolutely, because partnering and getting this right is all about trust, mutual trust. And when things like this happen, then there's obviously going to be trust issues. Do we really trust the NATO forces, or sometimes when the opposite happens? So you really got to get down there and talk from the leadership from the very top and get all the way down to the first-line supervisor leader of those Afghan soldiers to explain what happened. And, of course, you're sorry, but to explain what happened and put procedures in place so it not only doesn't, obviously it's not going to happen there again, but to make sure it doesn't happen anywhere else.
In terms of the other incident that we talked about, Britain deciding to take its soldiers out of part of Helmand province, as long as there is still a coalition combat mission in Helmand, and there is a significant one there, isn't this action just going to make it that much harder for American soldiers and Marines?
I don't think so. I think it's going to make it a lot easier. In a complicated place like that, there's a lot of assets involved. And so what this really does is it puts a regimental combat team from the Marines up north, the British in the middle, and a regimental combat team from the Marines down south. And it's just going to make it easier for the coordination of all the assets going to go in there. So it's simply an organizational thing, moving lines and making it clear. So it should make us much more efficient and make everybody much more efficient.
Does that mean in the bigger picture, as more coalition troops leave, looking ahead to the Dutch leaving, the Canadians potentially leaving at the end of next year, do you see it the same way, that it'll just simplify measures?
One of the important things that's going to make us successful here in Afghanistan is coalition forces. So you don't want to lose any of the other nations. But does it make it simpler? In some ways it makes it simpler because you have, less chain of command. And let's face it, there's always a language barrier, even in English-speaking countries. So in a way it would make it easier. But it's important. The Dutch have been involved in counterinsurgency a long time. The Canadians have been involved down in Kandahar for a long, long time. There's a tremendous amount of experience there that we're going to lose, but hopefully we'll be able to capture it before they leave.
In terms of thinking ahead about what happens long term to the effort here, obviously it's already been long term. We're heading into the 10-year anniversary of this war. Is it possible? What I saw down in Kandahar was a lot of policing, building up policing, standing up Afghan institutions, but also preparation for what's expected to be real kinetic combat operations, both with Afghan forces, but also American soldiers out there, orchard to orchard, field to field, house to house in those rural regions outside Kandahar city. Is it possible that American forces, coalition forces, could continue doing some of the standing up of the National Army, standing up of the police, standing up of the institutions, and not do the combat missions? Are those things intrinsically related, or could we be here in a non-combat function sometime more than a year from now?
Oh, I think we will be. I mean, it's going to take a long time for the Afghan National Security Force to be able to completely stand on their own. So just like Korea or World War II or any place we've been involved in, I mean, our commitment, our resolve to be here as long as the Afghan security force and the Afghan nation needs us. I think that's been clear by the NATO countries and clear by President Obama that we'll be here as long as we need to support them. I mean, the Afghan been out of this country, every year since we've been here, and the Afghan soldiers are brave soldiers, and they don't have some of the enablers. We haven't developed leadership as quickly as we wished, and but what's different, I think, is the confidence in the Afghan soldiers is at a peak that I've never seen it before. I mean, I could give you many examples where we were leaving. One example, we were leaving a fire base and we took fire, and actually across the street we took fire, and we fired some yellow smoke to say where the enemy was. And out of nowhere, here comes this Afghan National Army company in their up armored Humvees, and it is pulled up out of nowhere. They seen the yellow smoke, and we're on the radio saying, who's with these guys? Who's coordinating with them? And they just took off, moved to the sound of their guns, and attacked the enemy. And of course, it was well coordinated because in this case, all our signals worked. Yeah. And even though we didn't have physical coordination with them, we didn't have anybody with them, but they just took off and moved to the sound of the guns because they knew their coalition partners needed help.
Command Sergeant Major Michael T. Hall, you're a real senior officer here, and it's a real honor to have this much time with you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
About an hour south of here by air is the province and city of Kandahar. When President Obama put the weirdest bookend ever on a Nobel Peace Prize by sending 30,000 more U.S. troops into this war, he sent the bulk of those troops to the south. I embedded at Kandahar with some of our soldiers there from the 82nd Airborne. What they spend their days doing, what their job is, will blow your mind. Even if you don't think you care about the war for the war's sake, wait until you see what these Americans are doing here in the hottest part of it. We're live from Afghanistan. Please stay with us.